Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let's introduce ourselves. I'm Ismu and my friend Fathi. We will explain several important points in the journal entitled Testing the Effect of Regional, Ethnic, and International Dialect of English Listening Comprehension. Okay, in the first slide, the research intro. In the topic, Effect of Different English Dialect on Listening Comprehension. This research investigates how various English dialects, including regional, ethnic, and international varieties, affect the ability of listeners, especially second language learners, to understand spoken English. In the problem, listeners often struggle to understand English when it is spoken with unfamiliar regional, ethnic, or international dialect. Understanding English can become much harder when the listener is not familiar with the speaker's dialect. Differences in pronunciation, intonation, and speech rhythm across dialect can cause confusion and reduce comprehension. Why it matters? Global communication demands the ability to comprehend a wide range of English varieties. This has implications for language testing and academic success for international students. In today's globalized world, people must communicate effectively across different forms in English. Students, especially international honors, might encounter various dialects in university and need to understand them for academic success. Moreover, standardized tests like the TOEFL must reflect real-world communication scenarios to fairly assess students' abilities. The research question: do listeners experience more difficulty with regional, ethnic, and international dialect compared to standard American English? This study aims to find out whether comprehension problems are more severe when listeners hear English spoken in non-standard dialect compared to standard American English, which is considered the most natural and widely taught form. Okay, the next slide, the review of related literature. For the first, key theories and studies. In the first point, Dialect Familiarity Hypothesis, Brown 1968, Florida 1994. Listeners understand speech more easily when the accent or dialect is familiar to them. Exposure improves comprehension. Next point, Cognitive Load Theory, Monroe and Derwing, 1995. Processing unfamiliar dialects demands more mental effort, making listening comprehension more difficult. Okay, in the next point, Attitudinal Factors, Girl 1994, Mackey and Fine 1996. Listeners' attitudes toward the speaker's accent influence comprehension. Positive attitude can enhance understanding, while negative bias can hinder it. Okay, in the prior findings, standard dialects are generally easier to understand. Exposure and attitude significant influence listening success. Studies show that when listeners are familiar with a dialect or have positive attitude toward it, their comprehension improves. Standard American English is generally easier for listeners, especially non-native speakers, due to greater exposure and its prestigious status. Okay, in the next slide, the research method. In the design experimental listening test, the researchers conducted an experiment in which participants listened to lectures in different English dialects and answered comprehension questions. In the participant, 158 ESL or English as a second language learners and 52 native English speakers. The study included a majority of ESL learners alongside a control group of native English speakers to compare performance. The research site, various universities and language institutes in the western United States. Participants were recruited from educational institutions, ensuring a mix of academic backgrounds. Okay, in the procedure, listeners to 12 lectures delivered in 5 dialect categories. For the first, Standard American English, second, Southern American English, in the third, African American Vernacular English, in the fourth, Australian English, and the last, Subcontinental Indian English. Maybe that's all from me. The next material will be explained by Fathi.
Okay, thank you to Ismu who is in the first material. Here we'll explain data analysis. In this data analysis, we have three metrics. The first metric is listening comprehension score. This metric evaluates how well participants understood spoken content, rate on scale from 1 very low to 4 very high. The second metric is accent heaviness rating. This rating reflects how strong or heavy the speaker accent was perceived to be by the listener. The third metric is statistical analysis. Two-way ANOVA, factor, listener type, and speaker dialect. A two-way ANOVA was used to determine whether listener type, native versus non-native, and speaker dialect significantly affected comprehension score. Additional, TOEFL scores used as covariates to account for general English proficiency. TOEFL score were included as a covariate control for the participant general English proficiency, ensuring that comprehension differences were due to accent and not overall language skill. The next slide, research finding. In this slide, there's type for ESL listener and for native listener. For ESL listener, best comprehension with Standard and Southern American English, ESL, English as a second language. Listener understood Standard and Southern American English best, possibly due to clearer pronunciation or greater familiarity with these varieties. Greater difficulty with AAVE, Australian and Indian English. ESL listener found it harder to understand African American Vernacular English or AAVE, Australian and Indian English, likely due to unfamiliar pronunciation patterns or intonation. Second is for native listener, generally higher scores across all dialects. Native listener speakers consistently scored higher in comprehension, regardless of the dialect, suggestion more robust listening skills across linguistic variation. Cyclic comprehension dropped with ethnic and international varieties. Despite generally high score, native listeners saw a minor decrease in comprehension when listening to ethnic or international dialect, indicating some sensitivity to accent unfamiliarity. Next slide. Field research finding. Key observation. Speaker dialect significantly influenced comprehension score for all listeners. This dialect of the speaker had a clearer and significant effect on how well all the participants, both native and non-native, understood to the spoken material. No strong evidence that native and non-native listeners were differently affected by dialect type. There was no strong statistical evidence showing that native and ESL listeners were impacted different by the various dialects. Unexpected. Regional dialect Southern American English did not significantly harder ESL listener compared to Standard American English. Surprisingly, the Southern American dialect did not significantly reduce comprehension for ESL listener compared to the Standard American dialect, and contrary to initial expectation. That's all from me. Thank you for your attention. Sorry that still many shortcomings in our presentation. See you to the next video. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.